The moment my father locked the conference room door, I knew this wasn't a family meeting. It was an execution. 30 relatives sat in silence. 2 attorneys organized paperwork. A stack of documents with my name on the cover rested in the center of the table. Then my father stood up and said something that made the entire room stare at me. "Today we're taking back what Olivia stole from this family." Just like that, years of rumors became accusations. People I had grown up with shook their heads in disappointment. Some wouldn't even look at me. Others looked eager to watch me fail. For the next 20 minutes they attacked my character, my business, and every achievement I had ever worked for. They thought they had prepared for everything. Every argument. Every defense. Every possible excuse. What they didn't prepare for was the man sitting quietly in the back row. A man nobody seemed to recognize. A man who hadn't said a single word all afternoon. Because while my family was busy putting me on trial, they had completely forgotten one important detail. The only person in the room who knew the entire truth had been listening to every lie. And when he finally stood up, the room went silent. Including my father. Because in that moment their plan stopped being my nightmare. And started becoming theirs. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. The subject line simply read, "Mandatory family legal meeting." No explanation. No details. Just a date, a time, and a location. At first, I assumed it had something to do with my grandfather's estate planning. Family meetings weren't unusual when business matters were involved. But something felt off. When I called my father for clarification, he refused to explain. "Just be there," he said. Then he hung up. 3 days later, I walked into a conference room at a local law office and immediately realized this wasn't a normal meeting. The room was packed. Relatives filled nearly every chair. My grandfather sat at one end of a long table. My father sat beside him. Several attorneys were present. The moment I entered, conversations stopped. People stared. Nobody smiled. Nobody greeted me. The silence felt deliberate. I slowly took an empty seat. Then my father stood up. Without any introduction, he picked up a thick file and placed it directly in front of me. His expression was cold. "This contains evidence," he announced. The word echoed through the room. "We believe assets belonging to this family were improperly kept under your control." A murmur spread across the room. I looked around in disbelief. Some relatives were already nodding. Others avoided eye contact. That's when I understood. This wasn't a meeting. It was a trial. And I was the defendant. My father continued listing accusations while family members watched. Not one person asked for my side of the story. Then, before I could even respond, my younger brother walked over. He held out his hand. "Phone and wallet," he said. "What?" "For the integrity of the meeting." And to my shock, several relatives actually agreed. As my brother carried my phone and wallet to the far end of the table, I leaned back and took a slow breath. Panic was exactly what they wanted. I wasn't going to give it to them. Because the truth was, this meeting had very little to do with money. It was about resentment. Years earlier, my grandfather had helped me launch a small consulting business. Not with gifts. Not with handouts. With advice. Connections. And a modest loan that I repaid in full. While everyone else saw the successful company I own today, very few people remembered the years that came before it. The weekends I worked. The nights I slept in my office. The risks I took when success was far from guaranteed. But as the business grew, so did the rumors. Some relatives claimed grandfather secretly handed everything to me. Others believed I had manipulated him. My father and younger brother encouraged those stories. They never said it directly. They simply repeated questions often enough that people started treating them as facts. Why was I the one running the company? Why did grandfather trust me? Why wasn't everyone benefiting equally? Over time, suspicion became resentment. Resentment became entitlement. And entitlement eventually led to this meeting. A room full of people convinced they deserved something I had spent years building. Then, as my father shuffled through his documents, something caught my attention. A man sitting quietly in the back row. I had never seen him before. He wasn't a relative. He wasn't one of the attorneys presenting evidence. Yet, unlike everyone else, he wasn't looking at me. He was watching my father. And for some reason, he seemed completely unconcerned by everything happening in the room. My father cleared his throat and opened the file. The room immediately became silent. "This," he announced, lifting a stack of papers, is proof that Olivia unfairly benefited from family resources while excluding everyone else. Several relatives nodded. My brother smirked. I remained quiet. For nearly 20 minutes, they presented document after document. Financial statements, business records, old agreements. Every page was framed as evidence that I somehow owed the family part of my company. The more they talked, the more confident they became. Soon relatives started joining in. One uncle accused me of forgetting where I came from. An aunt suggested I should share ownership, for the sake of family harmony. Another relative questioned whether grandfather had been pressured into supporting me. The accusations came one after another. Meanwhile, my grandfather sat quietly. Too quietly. That bothered me more than anything else. He wasn't confused. He wasn't surprised. He was simply waiting. Eventually my brother stood up. His patience had clearly run out. "Let's stop wasting time," he said. He placed several documents in front of me. "Sign these." The room watched closely. I glanced down. The papers would transfer significant control away from me. Exactly what they wanted. I looked back up. No. The word landed like a stone. My father frowned. "You haven't even read them." "I don't need to." The room erupted with frustrated whispers. Then I calmly pointed to several dates in the evidence they had presented. Dates that contradicted each other. Signatures that didn't match timelines. Claims that made no sense when placed side by side. For the first time, uncertainty entered the room. But before anyone could respond, a sound echoed from the back. "Prep." Everyone turned. "Prep, prep." The mysterious man slowly rose from his chair. And as he continued applauding, every face in the room filled with confusion. The applause stopped. The room remained frozen. Nobody seemed to know who the man was. My father certainly didn't. His confidence vanished almost instantly. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man adjusted his jacket and calmly walked toward the table. Then he placed a leather briefcase beside my father's evidence folder. "My name is Daniel Foster," he said. "I'm an independent legal advisor." The room exchanged confused looks. Several relatives frowned. My father looked irritated. "And why are you here?" Daniel smiled slightly. "Because your grandfather asked me to be." For the first time all afternoon, every eye turned toward grandfather. He remained silent. Daniel opened his briefcase. Inside were organized folders and documents. Far more documents than anyone expected. "I've spent the last 8 months reviewing ownership records, financial agreements, loan documents, partnership contracts, and correspondence." The room became quiet again. Daniel continued. "Everything related to Olivia's company." My brother shifted nervously. My father folded his arms. Daniel began distributing copies. One by one, relatives scanned the pages. The mood started changing almost immediately. Every document told the same story. The ownership structure was legal. The agreements were valid. The loans had been repaid. The contracts had been reviewed and properly executed. Nothing had been hidden. Nothing had been improperly obtained. The accusations suddenly looked very different. Then Daniel revealed email records, meeting notes, signed acknowledgments, evidence showing that key family members had been informed of major decisions years earlier. The room filled with uncomfortable silence. Relatives slowly realized they had only heard one version of events. My father's version. Then grandfather finally stood. He looked around the room before speaking. "I asked Daniel to investigate because I suspected this day might come." And suddenly everyone understood why he had been so quiet. The room was completely different now. Just an hour earlier, people had looked at me with suspicion. Now they were staring at the documents spread across the table. And for the first time all afternoon, nobody was accusing me of anything. Grandfather slowly walked to the front of the room. He looked older than usual. Tired even. But his voice remained steady. "I asked Daniel to review everything because I wanted facts." His eyes moved across the room. Not assumptions. Not rumors. Facts. Nobody interrupted. 4 years Olivia worked harder than anyone realizes. He glanced toward me. She earned every opportunity she received. Then he turned toward the rest of the family. But I knew success could create resentment. That's why I made sure every agreement was documented and independently reviewed. The meaning was clear. He had anticipated this conflict long before it happened. Several relatives lowered their heads. A few quietly apologized. Others admitted they had accepted accusations without asking questions. Even my uncle, one of my loudest critics, walked over and shook my hand. Meanwhile, my father and brother remained silent. There was nothing left to argue. The records had answered every question. The truth had done what anger never could. As people slowly began leaving, grandfather stopped beside me. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. Those 4 words meant more than the entire meeting. Walking out of the building later that evening, I realized something important. Preparation isn't about proving people wrong. It's about protecting the truth. Because when facts are stronger than accusations, patience becomes your greatest advantage. And sometimes the person who stays calm wins long before the room realizes it. If this story kept you hooked, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more unforgettable family drama stories. And tell me below, what would you have done in my place?